Because if I'm going to do them all, it doesn't make sense to be like, oh my god, that's a global talent acquisition engagement manager. Exactly.
Well, no, it's just that it freaks me out when you said so, who am I introducing myself to?
Hello and welcome to another episode of This is Pico. On this episode we're talking about COVID and how did COVID affect Pico Technology. I'm joined here by Jane. Hi Jane.
Hello.
Try to introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Jane Percy. I'm the Chief Operating Officer. I've been at Pico Technology for 27.5 years and I'm one of Michael's colleagues.
Fantastic. So we're going to go back to the beginning. March 2020, everything was normal. There's this inkerings of this word COVID coming over. How did it affect Pico straight away? Once we realised this is now in the UK and we have to act on it, what did Pico do?
So the first thing we did was, as a management team, we got together. We had a meeting with all our department managers and said, okay, we actually did a vote. Who thinks this is serious? Who thinks it, is not too serious? And actually the majority of us thought this is serious, we need to do something. So we made a decision in that meeting, which was on the 12th of March, to send everybody home. So by everybody, I mean anybody that could work at home. We that day went out, told our teams, you're all going home, pack up your equipment and take it home. And it was the most weird day ever to see people just walking out with armfuls of IT equipment, running around saying, I need a headset, or whatever it was. I'll never forget that day.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think I'll ever forget
Yes.
either. I think something to note though, 12th of March, that was before the rest of the country were going home, before the government decided people should work from home. What do you think sparked? Why did Pico do that early?
We could recognise that this was going to be serious. Our MD was really keeping a close tab on what was happening, and he was saying, this is serious, and I kept saying, no, it'll be a bit like bird flu, it was a storm in a teacup, but he actually, well, as a management team, we said, yeah, let's go. I thought, personally, I'll be back in 3 weeks, but obviously 2 years later, we're still not fully back in the office.
Yeah, absolutely. What kind of feelings did you have, sending everybody home? How did it make you feel?
It was quite exciting at the time, but also a bit scary because this was something we'd never done. A few people worked from home occasionally. We didn't know whether the business would be able to carry on with everybody working at home. Clearly, we couldn't send our people from our Chester Road office at home. They dispatched the products. They needed to be in to do that work. But we were a bit worried, how is this going to affect people? We're a family company. We like to look after our people, and how is this going to affect everybody by sending them home?
Absolutely, and I think it affected people in different ways. They had a new way of working. Some felt quite isolated. They weren't there seeing the managers daily. What did you do about communication so that people knew just what was going on at Pico?
So that was the Thursday when we sent everybody home, and then myself and the CFO and the CEO on the Friday said, right, we need to have daily meetings and we need to be communicating out to everybody. We can't just gather everybody in the kitchen now. What we need to do is use our internal intranet, which we've got, to actually communicate to everybody what's happening, what they expect from Pico, what we were intending to do. So we used to put daily updates out in the early days about COVID numbers. If anybody had COVID, we'd check with them, are you okay for us to let your colleagues know? Because as I say, we're caring, and people wanted to wish people well and make sure they were okay. Did they need shopping? So it was really all about looking after everybody.
I think it was really important. It made people feel included. I don't think there were ever secrets from the staff. I think the communication was always very open and honest, which was gratefully received. Once we realised it wasn't quite going to be 3 weeks,
Yes.
And we realised it was sort of long term, the government introduced a furlough scheme. What did that do to Pico? How did that affect anything?
So the first we had ever heard of furlough was when the government mentioned it. So the first thing to do was, well, what does this mean? What is this? It's an American term, so we had to figure out what it meant for us, which meant that any of our employees who we didn't have work for, we could put onto a furlough scheme. The government in the early days would pay up to 80% of salary, and then we always topped it up to 100%. So we actually had 15 odd people on furlough for a few months in the early days. and they were all paid 100% of their wages.
That's, I mean, that really was fantastic, and I know for those people who were on furlough, gratefully received. It was a difficult time for many, and not knowing if you're going to pay your bills,
Yes, exactly.
taking that stress away was really good. There's a lot of fun stuff though that went on, and Pico tried to keep people together by doing some of this fun stuff. Let's have a little chat about that. What sort of things can you remember that we did during that time?
So we set up what we call the locked-in pub. So it was a virtual pub, and we encouraged people to join in at lunchtime or before work or after work. And then we did a weekly quiz for a little while. I mean, people run out of energy sometimes, and I don't know about you, but our families were all doing quizzes, and we were quizzed out after a few months. So we did that. That was really good fun. We also did virtual cocktail making, which was really good. We couldn't have a Christmas party, so we sent Christmas hampers to everybody. We've had
Comedy nights, escape rooms as well.
Escape rooms. So we had to think of different ways to socialise together, in effect.
And I think we saw there was these sort of formal events that Pico put on, but then you heard stories of sort of different groups of people started to bond, started to get together, and that was sort of really nice to hear as well.
Oh yeah, really nice.
It was quite a long time for everybody, but we started to see that reintroduction back to the office, which for a lot of people was as much of a change as everyone being sent home was.
Yeah.
How did you help to make people feel secure and safe coming back to the office?
So quite early on, for some people who were living on their own, didn't necessarily have a garden, couldn't escape from their four walls. Their bedroom became their lounge, their dining room, their office. And for some people, mental well-being was becoming an issue. So I spoke to everybody after about 6 months and found out the people who would benefit coming back to the office. So not necessarily for the job that they do, but for them as a person, it will be better for them to have a structure back in their day, be better for them to be back in the office, there'll be other people around. But what we had to do before that was to make sure it was safe for everybody. So we blocked out desks and chairs so people weren't sitting close together. We got some screens in, we got masks in, we insisted on masks in the office. We did full health and safety across the business to make sure it was a safe environment, and actually that was the feedback we got from those that did come back, were saying, actually I feel really safe to be back here, and that was the main thing about it.
Just want to go back on a point actually you raised at the beginning of that sentence. Talk about the mental well-being. Now, I know you're one of the mental health first aiders.
Yep.
Talk to us a little bit about what is a mental health first aider and what was their role during COVID, because I think it's very important to mention.
Yeah, so we brought on mental health first aiders 4 or 5 years ago at Pico. We've got physical first aiders. We knew mental health is as important as physical health, and they're obviously very closely linked. So as a team, the mental health first aiders, we were like, what can we do to help people? So after a couple of weeks, we sat down and said, let's check in with every single person in the business. So bearing in mind there were 128 employees at that time, it was a real big undertaking. There were 5 or 6 of us mental health first aiders. We had 20 people each per week to check in with, and that was really well received, and it was really good. And for us as well, we felt that we were helping. This is why we were mental health first aiders, so that we can help people. And quite a few people would be just replying by, I'm fine, I don't need to talk to anybody. And some people really did need to talk to somebody. But the other thing we did was set up buddy groups. So we asked everybody, would you be interested in joining a buddy group? And we put teams together of people, and quite a lot of those buddy groups are still going now, which is lovely, really lovely.
Okay, so COVID was a dark time for so many people. Do you think there were any positives that did come out of COVID that you saw?
Yeah, absolutely. I think from a business point of view, one of the big positives is that we can survive as a business with people working from home, which we're now doing flexible working, which is benefiting everybody. Those that can work from home can do that. We're not all back in the office yet. We've been very cautious about getting people back. But as we do bring people back to the office, it's nice that we can have that hybrid working. So that's one of the real positives. As a business, we really flourished. And I think relationships as well. There's so many people in the business that talked to people they wouldn't necessarily have talked to before COVID. And there's some good relationships that have come out of it as well.
And how do you see the future of business changing now in a post-COVID world?
Well, I think everybody's always got COVID in the back of their mind. We've pretty much lost 2 years. When we say, oh, when did that happen? You forget that 2 years have passed. I think moving forward, we've all learned from it. Some have had good experiences, some have had bad experiences. Luckily for Pico, we haven't lost anybody through COVID, which is amazing. But I think moving forward, it's just let's focus on that family feel and looking after each other. I think for me, that's one of the most important things.
That's awesome. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for taking some time to speak with us.
Thank you.
Hopefully it's been good just to relive those last 2 years and see what we've learned from it. So thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.